Like last meeting, of having two people work on this, do you realize this is worthy of a cow root? It's got to be the only example in the world if there's anything approaching a committee that actually turned out something. That's why I was so carried away with the stuff that was supposed to have been Ren and Worth, or Worth and Ren, according to which side you're voting on. Terry. Are we ready? Well, I guess I can say, I didn't really have anything else to say, but since a lot of you think so much of artistic wrestling, how about that other great mass tag team of Sammy Kahn and Jimmy Van Heusen, who said, I only miss her when I think about her. Now, good night until next time. Oh, all right. How about a real, if not a biggie question, how about a real dirty question? Is all ordinary thought solely and always secondary? Now, definitely, good night. All right, let's start all over. If you didn't allow your ordinary intellect, by the way, you people getting this on tape and anybody else that's not getting this on tape, I mean, if you're just picking it up on the fillings of your teeth somewhere out in the Midwest, if you hadn't been around this for a while, you know, the kind of stuff that I just said, and the kind of stuff I'll probably say before the evening's over unless something untoward happens. It sounds as though it's psychological commentaries on the nature of man, sociological commentaries when I seem to drag in more than one person, and it's not. You could hear it that way, and I guess, I don't guess, I know that many people would hang around this for some period of time, and even after I warn them about that, they don't have any choice. That's the way they hear it, and to hear it that way is not a mistake. It is just simply being shortchanged because you can hear it that way. And if that's what you need, I would suggest that if you find it interesting, then you would learn something from it. But it would all be on the same level, and it would really take you no place in particular internally. You might become a more interesting conversationalist at cocktail parties, which would really be a boon to our economy, I guess. But even though it sounds as though, which it has to using ordinary language, it sounds as though it has to do with the activities of humans, with behavior, of inner reactions, of what might be motivations, and etc. But it has to do with the physical energy running life. If you begin to be able to see this, you can, and I'm not trying to be spooky, but you can begin to actually see things that have no particular name. You can just see this occurring. I don't mean this literally as a parallel, but it's like seeing the kinds of visible, whatever they call them nowadays, the impacts that they can get off of the accelerators of bombarding at the particle levels, creating new, at least they think sometimes, creating new particles themselves, new elements. The thing is, those kind of little sketches that if you didn't know what they were, it doesn't really mean much. It looks almost like a Pollock painting. But the kinds of things I'm trying to talk about, you can actually turn around and see them going on. Was that sketchy enough? And not names, not of saying, oh, there's a person doing so-and-so, or there's a person being driven by their unconscious desire to be regressive. It's just you can turn around and see, I'm going to say it again, at least you think you lost your place, that if you did not, through your ordinary intellect, say why you like or dislike anything, then what you'd be left with would simply be doing so, if you were still doing so, for primary reasons. If you never did say why, if you did not listen to your own intellect, say why. Now you can take that psychologically if that's the best you could do, and I could go on and talk about it and point out how a person, if this, the premise of this was to make you a better ordinary person, or to make you be able to deal with ordinary life in a better way, which you can't, but you might think you could, and that would be the premise. Then I could go from that and apparently point out something that probably some people would find to be of some interest, if not imagined value. Consider it again. If you did not allow your ordinary intellect to say, you don't have to say it out loud, but if you never said through ordinary, the way in which you're wired up now, as to why, just worry about the why, as to why you like something or why you dislike it. It doesn't matter what the reason is. If you just would not let your ordinary intellect say why, then all that would be possible, if you still liked or disliked anything, it would only be on the basis of primary reasons. Then the dirty question, is all ordinary thought secondary to start with? Is that all that's possible? If it is, then what would you say about this kind of stuff? Well, you could say this might be thinking otherwise. Can you, right now though, think of, can you perceive in any way that ordinary thought could approach the kind of areas I sketched in and hinted at verbally by dividing up life into the primary, that which is absolutely, minimally necessary to keep you alive physically, and then that which seems to be more in the area that could be looked at as being uniquely humane, if not homo erectus, at least sapienly, that is a thinking creature, a talking creature. Although the division is not quite that simple, certainly. But that is, for those of you who might be coming in here afresh on this, is in general what I was pointing towards to refer to some activities as primary. Obvious ones being food, shelter, rest, water, sex. And anything else you could look at to start with as being secondary. That is, you could live. You would not be a full functioning, sophisticated, up-to-date person, but you could live without anything else, right? Sure. So, for the time being, until you could refine your own view of it, you could look at everything else as being secondary. Now back to my question. Is it possible that all ordinary thought is solely and always secondary in nature? If so, any of you that have your own suspicion, your own view of my kind of division into the conditionally put primary and secondary, then that doesn't say a hell of a lot about ordinary thought, does it? Could you not get by without ordinary thought? Now forget thought, don't take the whole ball game, just ordinary thought. Could you get by without it? Now back to the opening. If you did not allow your ordinary intellect to say why you like or dislike something, then you could only do so, assuming you still would, but you could then only do so for primary reasons. If you did not allow routine thought to say why. But please note, it always will. It may have to be solicited. Someone may say, would you like to do so-and-so? And you go, hell no. And they may just look like, really? And you go, all right, well, I'll tell you why. Then that is part of the secondary activity of life. That is part of the necessary energies that keep things churning along. But if you did not ever say why, now I'm not saying to stop liking or disliking. Of course, it's all a trick again, but it just don't say why. And then what would be left, I give you my guarantee. Since there are no three-dimensional refund counters, I give you my guarantee. If you did not say why you like or dislike something, then what would be left? Then you could only do so for primary reasons. How about, I wasn't fixing to share the blame or the great honor of being so intelligent with some of the Broadway lyricists and composers, but how about that's a good line, and the blues is full of it, rock is full of it, Greek literature is full of it, but a good old line, and the song was fairly sophisticated, which is not the point, but just the title of that old song of I Don't Miss Her until I think of her. And I can just remember a few of the words. There's no reason the title came to me. It was literate, sophisticated for its time, sung with a straight face. I don't miss her until I think about her. So? Just think, this kind of information has just been floating around in life. Life just noodles off to itself, does stuff like this, not just in passing, but enough that people gain reputations collectively over a period of years of writing such as this. Songs, poetry, epigrams, philosophy. And people go, huh. Or people may sit there and order, I don't guess they drink beer to Cohen and Van Heusen, but I know that Merle Haggart's written a variation of that. So they order a beer or some white wine and listen to the words on the jukebox or somebody in person. I don't miss her until I think about her. And people, I'm sure, would even look off and go, pithy. I'm sure they say that somewhere. Probably not in the places listening to Merle Haggart and ordering beer, but go, pithy. It's like it touches something. Or if you stop somebody and say, do you like that song? They say, yeah, that's a real idea, that like you can get over the heartbreak of a relationship once it's gone awry. And you seem like you're all right and you don't really miss the other person. And suddenly there you are sitting and something reminds you of her or him, and somebody walks by. So it is true that I thought I was sort of over it and I don't really miss her until I think about her. Think about that kind of information. It's been floating around. Of course, you people seeing this on tape at some of the time, some of the place I'm being funny, it's not supposed to cause anything, but I'm sort of assuming that you people have some interest outside worldly affairs, earthbound affairs. And there's the kind of information that's already floating around. Life already knows it. It's a variation, or kind of an exemplified variation, I guess, of me saying that if you did not allow your ordinary intellect to say why you like or dislike anything, then all you would be left with, the only thing then it would be possible to do would to be have any like or dislike for primary reasons, not secondary. Our love affair is primary. Of course, now you're getting into where I said there is no clear division, because romances, affairs in some way arise from sex, unless you're weird and I won't think about it. So it arose from sex somewhere. But why is it that people, they don't write songs? And it's not just the censorship of life. Well, I know they do here and there, but that is not the main theme of heartbreak poetry and literature throughout the years. I'm talking about for thousands of years right up until today. It is not directly that, boy, I miss sleeping with you. Think about it. And it's not. Don't think it's just censorship that they wouldn't play it on the radio. Remember, the Greeks didn't have radio. They could say anything they wanted to. And I do know that here and there people have done that, and I do know that here and there they've done it today. But looked at as the whole spectrum of having to do with human relationships, romantic relationships. What is the name of the general tune played throughout history? It's not on sex. It's on this other thing about love and romance and heartbreak. Why don't they go ahead and just talk about it, if indeed that's what it is? Why isn't our literature, why isn't our institutionalized three-dimensional memory replete, instead of I only miss her when I think about her, why isn't there about such things as you aren't all that important, but you're the only person I had to fuck? But you don't hear that. And not just because it's crude. What I'm trying to get you to see is, I was trying to hint, is when you get to the level of the human intellect, back to my question, is anybody sure, can any of you answer, can any of you suspect, even the possibility, that all ordinary talk is solely, exclusively, secondary? So I'm trying to hint at. Could you even conceive for a second that under ordinary conditions it might be impossible, I hate to say it, but here I go, that it might be extremely difficult to actually talk in a primary way, or to actually talk, which is not exactly the same thing, but listen, to talk actually about primary affairs. Now, as witnessed by my little crude line there, you could say, well, to take your example, that is mine, my division, that yes, people could talk about it, because you could do, or a human could do just what I did and say that the name of the song is, I don't miss her that much, but hell, now I got nobody to sleep with. I got nobody to have sex with. And you can say, well, a human could think of that. And I bet some drunkards have been sitting around somewhere and come up with a name like that. You know how drunkards are, so I hear. They can sit around and come up with that. But notice, it is not part of the mainstream of life. It is not part of the bell curve of the institutionalized human memory and human concept of affairs, of relationships. So you could say that literally, apparently, speech can talk about sex, can talk about food, but does it? I suggest no, not if you look at the way I'm. Possibly, if you are interested in trying to sketch this out, it's as though it never occurs to humans. That's not the reason, but it's as though that they never think about it. It's as though, if we were talking psychologically, it would be as though that human intellect has thought, well, I could write a song about how much I miss sleeping with that old person now that they're gone. And it's like that they just immediately would dismiss that and go, well, no, it's how much I miss rolling over and seeing the impression of your head on the pillow now that you're gone. And then for some reason that has struck everyone, you know, from Sappho to up to Peter Allen, the whole spectrum. People don't seem to ever think about writing it that way. They don't do it about food, but you can find in literature stuff about dining. You can find gourmeting strewn throughout plays, but not just about eating. You can find in literature, in art, plays, people rhapsodizing about the beauty of the Taj Mahal or a church or the castle where the prince takes up with the princess and takes her away. But they don't actually get into, nobody, it's as though they would say, well, let's see, what will I do here when the prince finally wins over the fair maiden and puts her on his horse and they ride off and get over the little knoll over there. And he says, here's where I live. And it's this great castle. And she looks up and she says, boy, at least then I'll get out of the rain. And that's the end of it. And it's the next scene. Or she says something, well, it could be a little more complicated. She could say, well, I'm really glad I took up with a guy like you that has a roof over his head so I don't have to sleep out in the ditches anymore in cardboard boxes. But they can go on for pages, if not paragraphs, over describing it, all the ambiance of the hall and how it looked from outside and how it looked from that down the drawbridge. But that's the same thing, if you follow the parallel, it would be the same thing as speaking about, I only miss her when I see or when I smell her fragrance on the pillow. That is to, I only miss her. She wasn't all that much, but I only miss her now because I'm having to sleep by myself for the time being. That's the same kind of relationship as it is in literature of the princess raving on about the beauty of the castle and all it means, as opposed to her just saying, well, at least I'm glad I took up with a prince who's got a roof that don't leak. We don't have to live out in a rabbit hutch. Now back to the top again. If you didn't allow ordinary intellect to say why you like or dislike, in the widest sense, why you approve, why you disapprove, why you are attracted to, or why you are repelled by something. Not the fact that this seems to occur, but as to the why. That if you did not do that, then the only thing that would be possible after that would be that you would have to do so for primary reasons. And yet everything at the ordinary level, everything in the affairs of man that you either like, dislike, approve, disapprove of, attracted to, or repelled by, is obvious. Even I hate to be this dumb, but I got to point out there's got to be a reason, right? And anybody of any reasonable intelligence would go, well, certainly. What are you, an idiot? In other words, if you don't like something, there is a why. Are you crazy? Sure, there's a why. And if you like something, there's a why, right? Well, in that case, how do you explain what I just said, assuming I'm correct, which I got to tell you. I'm not trying to show off people, but I am correct, if you're interested in this kind of stuff. That if you cease to say why, then the secondary reasons, I shouldn't be dirtier. I'll go back to the original. You fill in like I almost said something, see, those of you who want to. That if you did not say why you particularly like or dislike something, then you could only do so. The only thing possible left that you could do so along those lines, that is, to either like or dislike, would have to be then for primary reasons. So, if I am correct, which I am, it's my game, so I'm correct. I made up the rules, and this is one of the new innings. So I am correct. So if I'm correct, then how do you jibe that with the falling away that I was insinuating? The ludicrousness, even though it seems otherwise, for me to insinuate or to ask the question, how could you like or dislike something and not have a why to it? An ordinary intelligence would say, well, I wouldn't. I'd be a fool. In other words, you do have a why for every like and dislike. Sure I do. Then how do you jibe that if I were correct? And maybe I am. Let's say theoretically I am. With the fact that if you did not say why, there would be no why except, if at all, on a primary basis. And then I guess I can go ahead and push it far enough to say, if you even think, if you can sit there right now and think about this a little bit, if you do not say why, what kind of primary purposes might be left if you didn't say why you want to be dressed only in fashionable clothes, or why you only will live in one section of town, or if you can't live there, you won't tell anybody where you live, really. You'll insinuate otherwise, and you'll get on the subway or call a taxi and point in that direction, and as soon as you get out around the block, you have to tell them to double back. In other words, your likes and dislikes, if you did not verbalize them, are you sure what would be left? Now, ordinary people would be. Of course, they wouldn't go along this far with this kind of insanity. But if they did, they would still be insistent. They would have no choice. Well, there's got to be reasons. People do not like or dislike, other than if we're talking about manic depressives or obsessive behavior. But just ordinary people, if you like or dislike something, even though you may not be in the vanguard or you may not be in the majority, if you're saying there is a why, all right. But, leaving them and now back to you, how would you explain, if indeed I might be correct, that if you did not say why, even if there is apparently why, but you did not say why, that you would then only be left with the possibility of having a like or dislike on a primary basis? How would you explain that? So you can't. But then you can always lapse back to being ordinary and go, well, I don't want to. To my question, is it possible that thought, ordinary thought, is solely, always, secondary? And if you care to pursue that a little bit, then you would be well advised to ponder this along with it, that that which might be secondary at some place, at some time, at another time, could be otherwise. That information is not unknown in life, in men. That information has been floating around in all kinds of weird ways, or men have turned it into all kinds of weird symbols, that which would apparently be, they of course don't use my present term of secondary and primary, but that they would say this is in myths, religion, theories and ideas in psychology today that which apparently would be operating at one level, if you shift it over in some way, they would normally do it spatially and say, well, if you shifted this from right here to another person, or if you shifted this person that was thinking this way or feeling this way, they might also want to throw in, if you move this person under other conditions, then that which apparently was profitable here then becomes unprofitable. Or that which is apparently valid in this person's behavior, that is profitable to them, has a reasonable life-supporting payoff, all you got to do is move them over to another place, and it's otherwise. After that, people simply shrug or take notes or think, well, that's an interesting theory. But it is closer to a kind of operational use if you try and consider the fact that which would apparently be secondary, that is not absolutely, primarily required for existence at one place, I start off easy, at some time, could be otherwise at some other time, forget some other place, at some other time. They could go from being absolutely minimal, absolutely required, to being otherwise. As far as that being able to be reversed, I'll leave that to you. Nobody likes. How about that which might be primary? What if you get to another place, another time, and that which is primary where you were is no longer primary? That couldn't be true, could it? I mean, if something's primary, but to begin with, it's super important. So you certainly couldn't get to a place where things are, I mean, just per se, within themselves, indigenously, endogenously, and all kinds of other stuff, that it's just super important. And to actually get to some other time or some other place for you novices, and it ceased to be so. No. No, things that are actually important. Things that are actually important are important. And nothing's going to change that, right? In a future, in the future, in a future, a real explorer would discover that looking back at ordinary times, that is, like on a 3D planet, there is no such thing as cures. There are only treatments that are better, treatments that are worse. That is, treatments that are more or less functional. But there is no such thing as a cure. And I am certainly not speaking simply of medical matters, which should be down almost at the bottom of your list, right before death, is your health. But the cures in the broadest sense of the word, that is, all of the apparent ails, all of that which annoys a person, all that which bothers a person's nervous system up to the point that they think about it. It's something else that if you've got a thorn in your foot, I will just go ahead, as foolish as I may be, and assume that all of you are sane enough that you'd pull the thorn out. That you would not go hobbling to the library and going to the card catalog and starting off, I guess, under T's for thorns, or F for foot, or W's for what I do now. I will assume with no great thought that you would pluck. I guess those that say pluck would probably say pithy, but I guess you'd pull the thorn out of your foot. So I am talking about those things that apparently need cures that are in the non-physical realm, the non-material realm. And there are no cures in ordinary time, because that which distracts, that which disturbs, that which keeps things off balance is part of ordinary time. And so there's no such thing. You continue to think about it, you continue to read about it, it is part of the institutionalized intelligence of humanity for people to continue to talk about, well, this is no real cure. The inference being that we're getting closer to a cure for this, or this is not the cure for the rampant drug use in our elementary schools. This is not the cure for antisocial behavior. But the tacit part being, we're getting close, or it's possible. The intellect does not even normally, under general wiring conditions, want to face what would be a more pragmatic approach, even though it is not a cure, but would be to forget all ideas that there is a cure, because the cure is the 3D world. The problem is the 3D world. The limits of ordinary intelligence are the very things that make it appear to be a problem, and then of course also hold out the promise that somewhere over the horizon, beyond the barbed wire fence that is my own intelligence, is a cure, and there's not a cure. There are treatments that are more or less functional. That is, there are things that you can do that are more or less profitable. Ordinary people have no choice as to what they do, whether it's profitable or unprofitable. But as long as you believe that there is a cure, then the degree of efficiency of the possible treatments is never within your control. It's not even within your conception that there is any difference. You're driven to do this or that like you're supposed to be, and you'll continue to do it just as you should, as long as you believe that there is a cure, because to believe there is a cure for whatever the ail is other than the thorn, to believe there is a cure is to believe that time will stop. And ordinary time is not going to stop. It's a matter of whether you might be able to, do something else. But to wait for time to disintegrate, to wait for time to stop, that is the only thing that would be a cure for whatever it is. Whatever it is. Compulsive hand washing or compulsive refusal to get near water, unless it's with George Dickel. It doesn't matter. If you think there's a cure for that, you're wrong. And of course, if you think there's a cure for that, it can't be cured. It can be treated, if indeed you wanted it treated. But it can't be treated. Nobody inclined, at least silently, to give life another little hand, or to go, a corollary. No treatment, in fact, is universal, ideal, or permanent. And even if somebody sort of stumbled around and decided they were not going to seek the cure, that is, to once and for all get your desk cleaned off at 5 o'clock, and that's it, and you come back tomorrow, the next day, 10 years from now, 2 minutes from now, and your desk is still cleared, and you still have your job, everything, you have stopped time. You got to the right place, the band, the lyrics, the music, it all got to this one part you like, and you said, hold it. And it's the good old freeze frame right at the end of the movie where everything turns out right, the bad guys get it, the good people get together and they smile, and a little child walks up with a dog and licking a popsicle, and they all look down and they just smile and hug each other and freeze frame, and they roll the credits. That is stopping time. That is the belief that there is a cure. That's the belief that there is not only a final frame, but the final frame is not the big one. The final frame is possible in life while I'm still alive. That we can get things just like I want it, and then, God damn it, we'll bronze them. I'll get my brain responding to life and life responding to my wants just right, and if we can, in some way, we'll cosmically weld this process right there. That is the only thing approaching a cure in the 3D world, that is in ordinary time, which would be literally the stopping of time. Now back to the corollary. There is no universal, there is no ideal, there is no permanent treatment even. So if a person in some way got past for a second the idea that, all right, there's got to be a cure. That is, things have got to be straightened out once and for all. I'm just not praying hard enough. I'm not contributing enough money to the temple. I'm not taking enough drugs. I'm not running enough. I'm not worrying enough. I'm not mad enough. That even if they got past that of, all right, I'll forget an absolute cure. What I got to do is attack my problems, what seems to be my ills. I've got to pursue some form of self-treatment that at least is optimally efficient. It's from there to back to believing in a cure, and you got a new name for it. That is, to believe that there is a cure, a treatment, not necessarily a cure, but then to call it a treatment, that there is a treatment that is universal. What else do you call the religion of any group of people? That is, if not the cure, because the cure, they're always faced with this, ordinary intelligence, the cure has got to come after you die. I hope. But the treatment is universal. That is, all right, I'll become a Christian or a Muslim. Because no religion says this is the way to cure, or to at least to treat all of your ills, and the cure will come later, unless your name ends in G, and unless you're over 6'3". A religion is always universal. All you got to do is come join up. It is always ideal. That is, it doesn't say, all right, our religion, everything that bothers you, and you go, possible convert, you go, yeah, think about everything that bothers you. All right? You could even make a list. Don't do it right now. But let me tell you, if you would jump with our religion, it will relieve all but, now, would you hand that piece of paper? There are 4 or 5 that we got to tell you the truth, that our religion, it doesn't seem to have any effect for most people, that kind of still continues to bug you. But think about it. It's only 3 or 4 of these. Now here, take a look at it and see what you think. It's ideal. It's all-encompassing. And it's also, of course, as I said, that things are not. The religious idea, it's always permanent. It's not that you're going to come join the church and you'll feel real good and everything will be taken care of. But there's some talk going around. Our head man's told us, the Pope or somebody has hinted that the big guy may be about to pull our lease in. I don't know how much longer that this is going to be good for us, so you better get in now. There is no such thing in ordinary time as a treatment even. Forget the cure, but there is no treatment. That is, there is no ordinary attempt possible that in any way has the attributes of being universal, being ideal, it is all-encompassing, nor is it permanent. And yet, if you can follow this right quick, if we were dealing with ordinary intelligence, the ordinary functioning of everybody's ordinary nervous system, who in the world could abide that? To hear that anything you do, now I know there are people wired up in life that could hear that and they're already sniveling as part of their job, and so they could hear this and think, well, it's just more snivel fodder. So I'm not talking about people that are already, that their job description is pessimist, as they call it. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about an ordinary person. If you tried to point out what I am trying to sketch out for you, that the energies of life are such, that the energies that make humans uniquely in the 3D world irritated, dissatisfied. That is, that you can be fed, you can be warm, and you can be sufficiently sexed down. Does that satisfy you? No. Does it satisfy a hippo, a baboon, a dog? But a human? You can give a human everything they say they want to eat. You can bring in their dreamy sex partner, whoever they describe. You can get the temperature set just right, the humidity just right, and then let them eat, screw, lay down, relax, do it all, and then once they seem to quit moving for a while, and you say, well, is this bliss or not? Now you know a human's going to say, no. That's it. The very things that make humans human are the very things that cannot be treated. But what are they? Is what I'm starting out tonight trying to get you to see on your own. It's not that they are not primary, because you can do the primaries, but does that satisfy? Is that the end even for a few minutes? Disregarding a quick nap. That is, after a good meal and a quick fuck and all that. Forget all that of a... But is that satisfying? As great as it can be. It's always, you still go, So to believe that there is a treatment, even primarily, even if you tried to live the life, if you tried to return to some kind of noble savage existence, if you tried to pretend that you didn't actually have a couple of quarters of college and just wanted to go out and bareback it in life and just become a crude person and just satisfy your basic animal desires and that's it, you could go try it, but you can't back up. Remember, it's that severe tire damage when you try to back up. Once you're dissatisfied, in the human sense, you can't get undissatisfied, which is part of the joy and the fun of hearing about the Golgans and the people that, sophisticated Parisians, and decide, I'm too smart for this. I'm going to chunk it all away, tell my job as a banker, tell them to stuff it, tell my wife, I'll send you some money if I get a chance, and take off for the South Seas. And he gets there, no offense to the South Seas, no offense to telling bankers to stuff it, and certainly no offense to taking up painting and hanging around with women who don't wear many clothes in warm weather. But he got there, and then what happened? He drove everybody nuts, just as you know he should. Back to the point. You new people on tape, this is not sociology and it's not social criticism. It's simply the way things are. But beyond those kind of examples, and I could have ordinary people here and they could laugh along with a certain kind of sarcasm and think, yeah, that serves him right. And yet the same people, same ordinary intelligence that would nod along with that, still believe that there are treatments. They believe there's cures, but even if they tried to refine it a little bit, at my urging, they would still think that there are treatments that are universal, that are ideal, that are permanent. When what I'm trying to get you to see is, even if you fulfill what I'm describing as the primaries, that still won't do. So how can you think that there is a cure? The cure would be death. The treatment would be death. Or the closest it would be to treatment, which is no consequence, would be a snipping of the higher end of your nervous system to turn you into a non-verbal, a non-cortical active Homo sapien. Of course, I guess then you'd just be back to Homo erectus, at best. You wouldn't be the wise Homo anymore. The thinking Homo, you'd be the stand-up Homo, maybe. Let me pick up something else from the last time we were taping to refresh you. Remember, I was pointing out that spatial amplifiers take in a low signal with info and then mix it with a higher powered signal that is just raw power, has no info, and then sends it out to the output as high powered signal with info. Everybody remembers that? Now I got a question for you, since you've had, what are 3 days? Oh, a whole bunch of hours. Let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible, those of you that thought about it, and I'm giving you time right quick to try and catch up and think about that, is it possible that there could even be a powerful signal that carried no info? That is, that was meaningless insofar as humans were concerned. Think about it right quick. Anything, if you think about it at all, you thought about it right. That is, profitably. Are there such things as powerful signals that actually carry no info? Now take it beyond the mere material level that you could, from one viewer, I could admit that an earthquake or a tidal wave could be a strong energy signal of sorts. But beyond the strictly material, that which would be meaningful, that which would be pertinent to humans. Of course, the earthquake would be pertinent to lizards and snakes, but I'm saying that which would be pertinent specifically to humans. Can you even think? Can you imagine? Can you picture strong signals that are carrying no info? That is, that are meaningless. It looks as though we either do not have time or I'm not going to take time to pursue that one much further tonight. But the answer to start you going is yes and no. Well, it's yes that humans believe it, although they don't know my description of it. But they believe that there is information going around, that is, strong signals going around that has no meaning. Well, how about things that other people believe in that you don't believe in? And they might be fanatics. Just absolute fanatics in a chauvinistic way about their place of origin, about their religion, about their political association. I mean, just fanatical. Do all that, get in your face, and talk so loud that they spittle all over you. And so you could say, well, there's an example, because at least as far as that person's concerned, the signal, that's a powerful signal when they start talking about how it is to be a socialist, to be a neo-Leninist. And yet, as far as I'm concerned, that's foolishness. That's just insanity. I don't particularly like it. I don't even approve of it. It's just nutso. So, without even knowing my description, what they're saying is that, yes, there are signals around, that the voltage, the power behind it is large. Sometimes it happens not just individually, but historically, their whole movements. The insanity going over periods of time, sweeping up whole nations of people. And it was obviously a strong signal, but it had no meaning. It was just insanity. So you see, the answer is at least yes. Back to my question, which I thought we wasn't going into, but so people do believe that. But now I ask you again, is it actually possible that there is a strong signal, like one of the two, speaking back to the spatial amplifier that has all minimal ones I know of, have two inputs and one output? Because the input, they have to take in the raw energy, the AC or DC current, and they deal with that, which is carrying no info, not the info that's going to be used. Then they bring in the info carried originally on a weaker signal. Then they combine them to take the info that comes in weak and to send it out. Now I ask you, is it possible? Can you just get a glimpse of it? Is it possible in the nature of life, the way things are wired up, that there actually is or are strong signals running through the life of man that are carrying no info? That is, they're meaningless. It's just raw, strong signals. Is that possible? I'll give you one hint. If you think it is, you've got a skewed idea of the conservative nature of life, not in the political sense, but in the sense of not throwing away things that are still useful, which for many people should give them pause to at least cross themselves and say, thank you. I will repeat to you something. It was written fairly recently. The following, that all civilizations have their homicides, their suicides, their neuroses, which, since you people learn to follow fragmented sentences, if you follow into this, I'll interrupt already and say, for homicides and suicides, you can say all civilizations have their homicides, come out swinging, their suicides come out sniveling. Now back to the quote, where I was going. All civilizations have their own homicides, suicides, and neuroses, and they likewise have various practitioners to either treat or take advantage of this according to your view. End quote. Think about that. You want me to repeat it? That's just an ordinary book or article that all societies, all civilizations have their homicides, suicides, and neuroses with various practitioners to either treat or take advantage of them according to one's view. End quote. There is no view necessary, because some of you should be able to see by now. The key words in there, if I did not emphasize them enough, was the writer opining, stating as a matter of fact, that amidst all of this heartbreak, turmoil of being alive, such as all civilizations, not being strangers to homicides, suicides, and forms of neurosis. As bad as that is, in those societies, in civilizations, still come along under various names and guises those who purport to treat, but according to how you look at it, they either treat or they're simply taking advantage. And under various practitioners, of course, you can read everything from psychiatrists to shamans, to priests, parents, friends, that they're either attempting to treat or to take advantage according to your view. And there is no view. Well, in the 3D world there is, because he just said it. But if you're going to see anything, there is no view necessary. What's the difference in treating somebody and taking advantage of somebody? Those are not my words. And for you people on tape, this is not an attack on psychiatry or anyone. I'm just using the words to get you started that was a reasonable person, intelligent enough to be in print. If there are no treatments possible, what are all treatments from one view? Using their description, his description. If the possibility of taking someone who is homicidal or suicidal or just coming apart at the seams, coming unraveled, and you purport to treat them. If no treatment is possible, then this was this guy's story. He gave us two choices, according to your view, that these various practitioners are either treating people or taking advantage of them. So if that's the two possibilities, and I've already tried to get you to see tonight that there is no treatment, then what are all treatments? Of course, the correct term would not be take advantage of somebody, but see where that leaves ordinary thought, that as long as you say why something is true. If you say why you don't believe in psychiatry, or why you think religion has been worse than an opiate, it's been more like a quiche to people, or a eggplant souffle. Let Marx figure that one out. Yeah. If you're wired up that you have just a complete bad attitude, a negative response to religion, it's always on the basis of why. And the basis of why is, well, you would finally get to this if you were just reasonably intelligent in our day and time, is it takes advantage of people. Oh yeah, it says it's going to help them, but it just takes advantage of them. Or if you're wired up that you want psychiatry. Ha! And that's worse. That's worse than religion, because they dress up and they don't jump around and shout and wear funny hats. They look like they're reasonable and then make you lay down and do the same thing to you. And plus it costs more. They don't just ask for contributions, they put a actual figure on it. So they would say they're taking advantage of people. Those two choices, I pulled out that example because it would seem fairly clear-cut from many ordinary views. And I refer you back to the top of the page tonight. If you did not allow ordinary intellect to say why you approved or disapproved, why you believed or disbelieved in something, why you thought that, all right, this activity over here is either beneficial for humans, it could be salubrious to their health, or this is a detriment. There's a reason why you say that. But if you take away the why, if you will not even say it, you've got the possibility then of perhaps seeing something else. Since this still doesn't have a name, and so many of you seem to like me coming up with names that will never be used, instead of just a name, how about a description we'll end tonight. Never use it, and it's meaningless, but just so we can leave on a light note. I could say, or somebody could say, not me, forget that. I can picture somebody that maybe knew something about this, could saying this, that people actually living this are having fun inside by themselves that exceeds all possible fun that other people can have collectively out there.